The air in the Qara Desert dig site tasted like fine sand and ancient secrets. Sarah Jennings, with her perpetually dusty jeans and a ponytail that fought a losing battle against the heat, felt more like a professional dirt sifter than an archaeologist these days. Funding was tight, discoveries were scarce, and her dreams of uncovering a lost civilization felt buried under layers of bureaucratic paperwork. Today, however, was different, or it was starting to feel that way. Her shovel scraped against something unyielding, not the usual pottery shard or a crumbling brick. It was too smooth, too solid. "Hold on," she called out, her voice raspy. "I think I have something." The small team, mostly interns and a couple of seasoned but equally weary colleagues, paused their rhythmic digging. The desert sun beat down, turning the air wavy above the ancient ruins. Sarah carefully brushed away the loose earth, her heart giving a faint thrum against her ribs. Years of digging had taught her to recognize the unique thrill of a potential breakthrough, even if most of them turned out to be just more rocks. What emerged was not a rock, it was a head. Not a human skull, but a sculpted one. As more dust was cleared, a face began to reveal itself. Sarah frowned, her brow furrowed under the brim of her wide-brimmed hat. The material was unlike anything she'd ever seen. A dark, almost obsidian-like stone, but with a faint internal shimmer that seemed to catch the light. It wasn't weathered, chipped, or faded. It looked new, impossibly new. "Sarah, what is it?" asked Mark, her usually stoic second in command, stepping closer. She didn't answer immediately, her fingers tracing the contours of the face, the jawline strong and chiseled. The eyes, half-lidded, giving off an intense, almost soulful gaze. The nose, straight and distinct. And then, the hair a pompadour, sculpted with impossible deave above the forehead. A nervous laugh bubbled up from deep within her. It was a laugh that bordered on hysteria. You guys are not going to believe this." More careful digging. The head led to shoulders, a torso, legs. Slowly, painstakingly, the entire figure emerged from the embrace of the earth. It was a statue about 3 feet tall, standing upright, arms slightly bent, as if holding an invisible guitar, and it was unmistakably, undeniably. Mark were 200 miles from the nearest paved road in the middle of a 3rd century ruin. Who would bury a perfect Elvis statue out here? One of the interns, a bright-eyed young woman named Lily, giggled. It's like he's been perfectly preserved in carbonite or something." But it wasn't funny, not really. Sarah knelt beside the statue, running her hand over its smooth, cool surface. The craftsmanship was beyond anything she'd ever encountered in ancient art. Every detail, from the iconic lip curl to the slight swagger of the hips, was rendered with uncanny precision. It wasn't a crude interpretation, it was Elvis frozen in time in his prime. "The material," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to the team. "It's impossible. It doesn't look like stone. It feels like polished glass, but much harder, and it's radiating a faint warmth. Not just the usual scientific curiosity, but something else, a faint hum, a vibration that seemed to emanate from the statue itself. It was almost like a melody, unheard, but felt resonating deep in her bones." She shook her head, dismissing it as the desert heat playing tricks on her. "We need to get it back to the lab," Sarah declared, standing up. Her voice had regained its professional edge, masking the wild confusion swirling inside her. Carefully, very, very carefully. The team worked with a renewed, almost reverent energy. The discovery was bizarre, unprecedented, and defied all logic. An ancient Elvis. It was the kind of thing that got you laughed out of academic circles, labeled as a crackpot. Yet here, it was undeniable, staring back at them with those iconic dreamy eyes. As they lifted the bucket onto a makeshift stretcher, Sarah noticed something else. Along the base, etched in faint swirling lines, were symbols. They weren't hieroglyphs, she recognized, nor any ancient script from the region. They looked almost musical, like a staff of notes, but from a forgotten alphabet. She touched the symbols, and the warmth intensified, followed by that same subtle, internal vibration. For a fleeting second, she could almost hear a faint, distant melody. Bluesy, soulful, yet ancient-like. It was born from the very dust around them. "This is going to change everything," she whispered, her gaze fixed on the perfectly sculpted face of the king. "Or at least it's going to make me question everything I thought I knew." The sun began its slow descent, painting the desert in hues of orange and purple. The figure of Elvis, wrapped carefully in protective cloth, lay cradled in the back of the transport vehicle. As it bounced along the rough track back to the camp, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't just unearthed a statue. They had unearthed a mystery, one that hummed with a life of its own, waiting to be understood. And she, Sarah Jennings, the jaded archaeologist, felt an unbidden spark of excitement, a sense of wonder she hadn't felt in years. The king had arrived, and her world was about to be all shook up. Back at the rudimentary field lab, which was essentially a large air-conditioned tent filled with tables and equipment, the Elvis spade became the undisputed center of attention. Sarah had immediately placed it on a clean tarp, away from the dust, and set about isolating it for initial analysis. Mark and the others kept their distance, a mixture of awe and unease on their faces. Still nothing. The surface remained perfectly smooth. Unblemished, Mark whistled. "What is that stuff?" "Vibranium." Sarah ignored him. Picking up a small diamond-tipped drill, she aimed for an inconspicuous spot on the base. The drill whirred to life, its tiny head spinning at incredible speed. It touched the bucket. No dust, no resistance. Drill bits simply skated across the surface, leaving no mark. It was like trying to drill into a force field. "Impossible," Sarah muttered, switching off the drill. She tried a laser spectrometer designed to identify chemical composition without physical contact. She aimed the beam. The machine whirred, lights flashed, and then, inexplicably, it shut down with a soft pop. A faint scent of ozone filled the air. "Just overloaded," she said, staring at the inert equipment. Lily, peering over her shoulder, asked, "What about carbon dating? Can we tell how old it is?" "We can try," Sarah replied, though she already suspected the answer. Carbon dating required organic material, and this statue felt anything but organic. She brought out a portable X-ray fluorescence, XRF, analyzer. The XRF uses X-rays to excite atoms in a sample, making them emit characteristic X-rays that identify their elemental composition. The XRF screen remained blank. No data. It was as if the statue wasn't there or was made of elements unknown to the machine. Frustration began to bubble within Sarah. Every standard archaeological and geological test, this wasn't just unusual. It was defying the laws of physics as she knew them. She paced around the tent, running a hand through her hair. It's from another dimension," she mumbled. Later that night, long after everyone else had retreated to their tents, Sarah sat alone with the Elvis spade. Inside, the silence was broken only by the whirring of a small fan pushing the warm air around. She had covered the tent's entrance with a "Do Not Disturb" sign, feeling a strange need to protect the statue, not just from the elements, but from cynical eyes. She pulled out her tablet and started scrolling through debris, searching for any ancient artifacts that remotely resembled it. Nothing. No record of any advanced material that could resist modern tools so completely. No sculpture style that matched its uncanny realism, especially not from this region or era. As she stared at the statue, she noticed it again. That faint, internal shimmer, like starlight trapped within dark glass. The warmth it radiated seemed to increase slightly, wrapping around her like a gentle, unseen current. Then she heard it. At first, it was just a faint, almost imperceptible vibration in the air. Then it resolved into something more specific. A hum, low and resonant, like a bass guitar string plucked softly. It wasn't coming from the air conditioner or the generator. It was coming from the statue, Sarah leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. It was a tune she realized slowly forming in the air around her. It was distorted, ancient sounding, like listening to a record played through water, but undeniably familiar. A bluesy guitar riff, a hint of a drum beat, and then a phantom, deep voice, almost a whisper rising in an unmistakable, powerful crescendo. Ha ha ha! Return to sender. Sarah gasped, leaping back from the table. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She was hallucinating. She had to be. The desert was getting to her. She closed her eyes tightly, counted to 10, and opened them. The hum was gone. The music was gone. The tent was silent again, save for the generator. She reached out a trembling hand and touched the statue's arm. It was smooth, cool, solid. Just stone. Just embebbied. No, she whispered, her voice shaky. That couldn't have been real. But a prickle of unease, a cold certainty spread through her. She hadn't imagined it. It had been too clear, too specific. The iconic riff, the low growl, the unmistakable phrase. She backed away from the table, pulling her chair closer to the tent wall, staring at the statue. Like it was a living, breathing entity, the Elvis figure seemed to gaze back, its sculpted eyes holding a secret that mocked her scientific understanding. Was this just an incredibly elaborate, deeply bizarre modern prank buried centuries ago, or was something truly inexplicable happening? Sarah felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Her scientific training screamed for a rational explanation. But a deeper, more intuitive part of her felt a profound shift. This wasn't just a discovery, it was an invitation into the impossible. And she was against all her rational instincts, ready to accept it. The next few days were a blur of restless nights and obsessive experimentation. Sarah tried everything she could think of, and everything her colleagues suggested, short of destroying the Beckett, which, given its imperviousness, would have been impossible anyway. She tried sonic vibrations, magnetic fields, different light spectrums. The results were always the same. Nothing registered, nothing changed. Yet the statue stubbornly resisted any form of analysis, and the whispers continued. They were subtle at first, mostly when Sarah was alone in the lab late at night. Faint, ethereal melodies would drift through the air, sometimes a full, clear snippet of an Elvis song, sometimes just a few notes that evaporated before she could fully grasp them. It was always old school Elvis, the rockabilly, the blues, the soulful ballads, never the later Vegas era. One night, as she was meticulously sketching the unidentifiable symbols etched on the statue's base, she heard a distinct, low thrum like a bass line vibrating through the very air. Then a guitar solo, sharp and vibrant, played with a ghost's touch. It wasn't just in her head. She could feel the vibrations in the table, in the floor. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet tent. "Is anyone there?" The music intensified, then abruptly shifted. It wasn't an Elvis song this time. It was a melody she'd never heard, ancient and haunting, yet undeniably beautiful. It felt like a lullaby and a lament. All at once, the emotional resonance was overwhelming, bringing tears to her eyes, for reasons she couldn't explain. She reached out and laid her hand gently on the statue's arm. The warmth was comforting now, not unnerving. The musical vibrations pulsed through her palm, up her arm, and settled in her chest. It was a connection profound and wordless. "You're not just a statue, are you?" she murmured. "You're something else." The ancient melody faded, replaced by the familiar opening chords of "Can't Help Falling in Love." The ghost of Elvis's voice, a deep, resonant hum, filled the tent. It wasn't a human voice, not exactly, but an echo of one imbued with immense emotion. It was gentle, almost melancholic. Sarah found herself swaying, a lump forming in her throat. She had always been a science-first person, dismissive of anything that smacked of the supernatural, but this was beyond science. This was a direct, undeniable communication from something ancient, something that chose to speak in the language of Elvis Presley. She remembered her grandmother, a sweet old woman who used to play Elvis records on a crackly guy mic player. Grandma June had loved him, had believed he was more than just a singer, that he had a spirit that transcended fame. Sarah, then a skeptical teenager, had just rolled her eyes. Now she wondered. She spent hours just listening, feeling. She realized the statue seemed to respond to her thoughts, her emotions. When she felt frustration, the music would become chaotic, dissonant. When she felt wonder or a quiet acceptance, it would become harmonious and clear. It was as if the method was mirroring her, or perhaps trying to guide her. She tried speaking to it, tentatively at first. "What are you? Why do you look like this? What do you want?" The hum would shift, rise and fall, sometimes feeling like a question mark, sometimes like a period of understanding. She started to perceive it, not as a passive object, but as an active presence, one with its own form of consciousness or purpose. Her colleagues, however, remained unconvinced. Mark suggested stress-induced hallucination. "Maybe it's some kind of ancient sound device, Sarah," she said kindly. "We just haven't figured out its frequency yet." Sarah knew it was more than that. It was the Elvis part that truly confounded them. If it had been a generic ancient figure, they might have considered it an unprecedented technological marvel. But Elvis, the pop culture icon of the 20th century, it was too much for them to reconcile. "It's not just a frequency, Lily," Sarah insisted one morning, bags under her eyes. It's almost like it's trying to tell me something through the music." "Tell you what?" Mark scoffed. "To buy a Cadillac and a peanut butter and banana sandwich." Sarah just gave him a cold stare. She knew she sounded crazy, but she also knew what she was experiencing was real. She felt isolated, a lone explorer in a strange new wilderness of the impossible. But then, the thought struck her. If it was trying to communicate, maybe it was giving her clues. Not just through the songs, but through the feeling, the vibe. What did Elvis represent? What was his legacy? Beyond the music, he was about connection, about reaching millions, about a powerful, undeniable charisma that transcended generations. He was about the human spirit expressed through performance. Was the Beckett trying to tell her something about a timeless connection, about the power of music? That night, as the phantom melodies of "Love Me Tender" filled the tent, Sarah knew she couldn't stay in this dusty, skeptical environment. She had to take the BEPIG somewhere else, somewhere she could research it properly, without ridicule. Somewhere she could truly listen to its whispers and try to understand what ancient secret the king was trying to reveal. Her journey with the Elvis Spady was only just beginning, and she was ready for it, no matter how crazy it sounded. Sarah knew she couldn't continue her research in the field lab. The skepticism of her colleagues was a constant barrier, and the BEPIG's true nature felt too vulnerable to be dismissed as a hoax or hallucination. She needed resources, archives, and perhaps a mind more open than those stuck in the traditional archaeological trenches. She made a difficult decision, citing unforeseen complications and the need for specialized off-site analysis, vague enough to satisfy her supervisor. For now, she arranged for the Elvis Spady to be carefully packed and shipped to a secure Presley connection. It was a risky move bordering on insubordination, but she felt an undeniable pull, a responsibility to the BEPIG that transcended her career. The facility was state-of-the-art, empty, save for a few maintenance staff and a handful of forgotten projects. It was perfect. She could work in peace, with access to global database and a vast library. Once the BEPIG was settled in a climate-controlled room, Sarah plunged into her research. She started by searching for anything at all that resembled the statue's inexplicable material. Nothing. Then she shifted her focus. What if the Elvis resemblance wasn't just a coincidence, but a clue, a modern echo of an ancient archetype? She spent days, then weeks, deep in academic debris, sifting through obscure texts, ancient myths, and forgotten folklore. She wasn't looking for Elvis anymore. She was looking for ancient figures associated with music, charisma, and a unique ability to connect with people. She delved into the myths of ancient bards, shamans who healed with sound, and figures said to charm beasts and men alike with their voices. She studied forgotten cults of melody and legends of stones that sang. It was a long shot, a desperate attempt to find a pattern in the impossible. Then she found it, tucked away in a digitized collection of obscure Sumerian tablets, translated imperfectly in the early 20th century. Was a short, almost poetic passage. Spoke of the singer of stones, a figure said to appear in times of great discord, bringing harmony through a music beyond hearing. The descriptions were vague, metaphorical, but striking. His visage, though mortal, was shaped by the winds of charm, drawing all eyes. His voice, a river of melody, flowed from a stone of night, not born of breath, but of spirit. His visage, though mortal, was shaped by the winds of charm. Could that be a poetic description of charisma? Of a universally appealing face? A face like Elvis? She searched for more references. She found a fragmented text from ancient Egypt, speaking of a sculpture of resonance. A dark, smooth stone figure said to emanate soul-stirring vibrations that could bring comfort and inspiration. The description of the material, though poetic, hinted at something beyond earthly stone. Dark as the void, yet holding the light of distant stars within its depths. This was it, not direct evidence, not a blueprint, but patterns, echoes across cultures and millennia. The legends were dismissed by mainstream historians as fanciful folklore, artistic interpretations of natural phenomena. But Sarah saw the truth shimmering beneath the surface. She returned to the Elvis bit, heart pounding. "You're the singer of stones," she whispered, touching its hand. "You're the sculpture of resonance." As she spoke, the Beckett began to hum, not the subtle hum she was used to, but a clearer, more resonant melody. It was the ancient haunting tune she had heard before, the one that had brought tears to her eyes. It swelled, filling the sterile room with a profound sense of peace, and then woven into the ancient melody came a new sound. It was the gentle, soothing strumming of an acoustic guitar, playing a familiar chord progression. It was "Love Me Tender," stripped down to its purest form. And clearer than ever before, she heard the ghost of a voice, not singing words, but conveying an emotion. Understanding. It was responding to her. It knew she was getting closer. The eerie coincidence of Elvis was beginning to make a terrifying yet beautiful kind of sense. Perhaps the Bebbit was not literally Elvis, but a timeless conduit, a vessel for a universal principle, the power of charisma, connection, and music to unite and heal. And in the 20th century, that principle had manifested powerfully in Elvis Presley, making him the perfect modern face for an ancient force. Sarah felt a surge of exhilaration. This wasn't just an archaeological mystery, it was a profound spiritual and historical one. The legends were real, and she, Sarah Jennings, was standing at the cusp of proving it. The world might laugh at her now, but soon they would have to listen. King, ancient and eternal, was ready to reveal his timeless song. Leaving the remote dig site with the Bebbit had been a calculated risk, but getting it to the private research facility in her old university town far from the desert had been an even bigger challenge. Sarah had used her limited connections, pulled every favor, and finally, through a network of secure, unmarked vehicles and a story about a highly sensitive geological sample, she had managed to transport the Elvis bait. The statue, nestled securely in a specialized vibration-dampening crate, traveled in the back of a nondescript van. Sarah insisted on riding with it, ignoring the driver's bemused glances. She felt an almost parental protectiveness over the dark, gleaming figure. During the long drive, which spanned 2 days across desolate highways and then into bustling cityscapes, Sarah noticed subtle shifts in the atmosphere around the van. It wasn't always obvious, but sometimes a feeling of lightness, of inexplicable joy would wash over her. Once stuck in snarled traffic on a dusty interstate, tempers flared among the drivers around them. Horns blared, curses were exchanged. Then a faint, almost subliminal melody seemed to ripple out from the van. It was a sweet, calming tune, like a gentle lullaby. Slowly, miraculously, the tension eased. A woman in the car next to them started humming, then inexplicably smiled at the frustrated truck driver beside her. The traffic didn't disappear, but the anger did. Another time, at a lonely diner on the edge of a forgotten town, Sarah and the driver stopped for coffee. The diner was quiet. The waitress looked utterly exhausted, and the few customers hunched over their plates seemed lost in their own worlds. As Sarah paid the bill, she felt the familiar faint hum emanating from the van parked outside. Suddenly, the old jukebox in the corner, which had been silent, crackled to life, playing a classic Elvis tune, Jailhouse Rock. The waitress, startled, looked up. Then a small smile touched her lips as she unconsciously began to tap her foot. An elderly couple who had been sitting in stony silence exchanged a glance and a faint shared chuckle. The atmosphere in the diner lifted just a notch, just enough to feel it. Sarah felt a surge of warmth. It wasn't just communicating with her. It was affecting the world around it, subtly, gently. It wasn't just a singing stone. It was a feeling stone, a catalyst for human connection and positive emotion. As the van finally pulled into the loading dock of the secure research facility, Sarah felt a profound sense of relief and purpose. Her initial cynicism about her career, about the pointlessness of digging up dust, had vanished. This was the most important thing she had ever done. She had spent so long chasing promotions, grant money, and peer recognition. Now all that seemed trivial. Her goal was no longer about advancing her career, but about understanding and protecting this incredible anomaly. She was no longer just an archaeologist, she was becoming a guardian. The facility was old, a bit rundown in some areas, but the wing she had access to was meticulously maintained. It had soundproofed rooms, specialized containment units, and most importantly, privacy. She directed the movers to a large empty lab bathed in soft indirect light. As the Elvis bat was carefully placed on a reinforced pedestal, Sarah stood back admiring it. The dark material seemed to absorb and reflect the light, its internal shimmer mesmerizing. It looked just as magnificent here in a controlled environment as it had in the harsh desert sun. She thought about the ancient legends she had uncovered, the sinner of stones, the sculpture of resonance. They spoke of a timeless power, a source of harmony. And in Elvis, she saw a modern embodiment of that power, a voice that transcended boundaries, a presence that united millions. The Beckett wasn't just a relic. It was a living link between the deep past and the vibrant present. She activated the room's security protocols, making sure she was the only one with access. The hum began almost immediately, a low, inviting thrum that filled the silence. It was like a greeting, a sigh of contentment. Sarah pulled up a chair and just sat, watching the statue. The desert dust that had once covered her seemed to have been replaced by a different kind of energy, a vibrant current of discovery. Her heart, once jaded and weary, felt lighter, filled with a new kind of excitement. She wasn't just trying to solve a scientific mystery anymore. She was embarking on a journey of understanding, a journey into the heart of humanity's deepest need for connection and shared joy. And her guide, the ancient spirit of harmony, wore the unforgettable face of the king. The eerie coincidence was now a profound mystery, and Sarah was ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. With the Elvis bag safely ensconced in her private lab, Sarah felt a new sense of freedom. No more skeptical glances, no more arguments over funding, just her, the king, and a mountain of data to sift through. She decided to approach her experiments less like a rigid scientist and more like a curious student, trying to understand a new language. She began by playing music for the bucket. She started with classical, then jazz, then folk. The statue remained impassive, though she sometimes felt a slight variation in its internal warmth, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in the light within its dark material. Then she decided to play Elvis. She started with a compilation of his early Sun Records hits, raw, energetic, revolutionary. The moment the first guitar riff of "That's All Right" filled the soundproofed room, something extraordinary happened. The internal shimmer in the Beckett intensified, pulsing with a vibrant electric blue light. The hum, which had been a gentle thrum, deepened into a resonant bass that vibrated through the floor. And then a phantom drum beat crisp and powerful, joined the ethereal guitar. The room was filled with the sound of a full band, ghostly but undeniably there, playing with an energy that felt boundless. And then the voice, it wasn't just a whisper now. It was a clear, resonant baritone, singing the words to "Hound Dog." It was Elvis, king in his prime, performing right there in her lab through an ancient Beckett. Sarah stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. It was real, undeniably, breathtakingly real. Not a hallucination, not a trick of the mind. She could hear the distinct gravel in his voice, the playful inflection, the raw power. It was like he was there, a shimmering presence singing just for her. The statue vibrated with the music, its surface rippling faintly as if the sound waves were physically impacting its impossible material. For a fleeting second, a shimmering, translucent image of Elvis, his signature pose, guitar in hand, seemed to hover just above the statue, dissolving as quickly as it appeared. When the song ended, the vibrant blue light faded, the hum returned to a gentle thrum, and the room was once again silent, save for Sarah's rapid breathing. She walked over to the Beckett, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch it. It was still warm, still solid, but now imbued with a different kind of magic, a vibrant, undeniable energy. She knew in that moment that she could no longer keep this to herself. It was too important, too incredible, but who could she trust? Who would believe her without dismissing her as unhinged? She thought of her old professor, Dr. Aris Thorne. Aris was eccentric, a brilliant historian known for his unorthodox theories and his open mind. He was often ridiculed by his peers for his fringe interests in ancient anomalies and forgotten spiritual practices, but he had always been kind to Sarah, nurturing her own slightly rebellious, intellectual curiosity. He was the only one she could think of. She called him, her voice tight with suppressed excitement. "Dr. Thorne, it's Sarah Jennings. I've made a discovery, something truly extraordinary. I need your help, your mind, your open-mindedness." Aris, ever calm, listened patiently. "Extraordinary, you say? Sarah, my dear, you know how much I cherish extraordinary. Tell me more." She explained carefully, vaguely at first, about an artifact that defies all known science, and then, hesitantly, she dropped the bomb. "It looks exactly like Elvis Presley, and I believe it sings." There was a long silence. On the other end, Sarah held her breath. Would he think she'd finally cracked under the pressure of endless grant applications? Then a low chuckle. "Elvis, you say? Well now, that is a curious detail. Perhaps it's a testament to the universality of certain archetypes, HM. Or perhaps, my dear, you stumbled upon something far stranger than a mere archaeological find. Where is this singing Elvis, Sarah? I'd be delighted to offer my humble insight." The next day, Aris Thorne arrived. He was a small man with a shock of wild white hair and eyes that sparkled with perpetual curiosity. He greeted Sarah warmly, a genuine smile on his face. She led him into the lab, her heart pounding. She had set up her recording equipment ready to capture the magic. Aris walked slowly around the statue, his hands clasped behind his back, his brow furrowed in concentration. He didn't touch it, just observed. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Craftsman's exquisite, and the material fascinating." "Watch this," Sarah whispered, and played Jailhouse Rock on her sound system. The effect was instantaneous. The blue light pulsed, the hum deepened, the phantom band roared to life, and Elvis's voice, full and vibrant, filled the room. This time there was no shimmering image, but the presence was undeniable, a palpable energy. Elvis's eyes widened. He took a step back, then another. His jaw dropped. He looked at Sarah, then back at the statue, then back at Sarah, a slow smile spreading across his face. "My dear Sarah," he said, his voice filled with an almost childlike wonder, "you have indeed found something extraordinary. This is beyond anything I could have imagined." His belief, his awe, was a balm to Sarah's soul. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't alone. This wasn't just a scientific anomaly. It was a miracle. And now she had a partner, someone who would help her unravel the deeper secrets of the king. The heartwarming journey had just found its first fellow traveler. With Dr. Thorne on board, Sarah felt a profound shift in her research. No longer burdened by skepticism, they could delve into the profound questions the Beckett presented. Eris, with his vast knowledge of ancient civilizations, esoteric philosophy, and the history of music and ritual, brought a new dimension to their understanding. They spent weeks experimenting, observing and theorizing. They found that the Beckett seemed to thrive on focused attention and positive intent. When they treated it with reverence and curiosity, its musical manifestations grew stronger, clearer. They discovered it could play any Elvis song they requested, almost as if it had access to a universal database of his entire catalog. "It's not simply reproducing sound," Arius observed, his eyes gleaming with excitement, as blue suede shoes boomed through the lab, vibrating the very air. "It's synthesizing it, imbuing it with emotion, presence. It's like the essence of the performance itself is being channeled." Sarah nodded. "And the material? It's like a living conduit. It reacts to sound, to light, to our very thought." Their combined research into ancient texts and the Bopic's responses led them down a fascinating path. They started to piece together the true purpose of the Singer of Stones and the Sculpture of Resonance. "These legends," Eris explained, pointing to a holographic projection of fragmented ancient texts on the wall, "they speak of times of great societal unrest, of nations at war, of people disconnected. And in these moments, the singer would emerge or be activated, bringing harmony through its music beyond hearing." "Music beyond hearing," Sarah repeated, touching the Bepic. "That's what it is, isn't it? It's not just the sound, it's the feeling, the emotional resonance. That's what touched people in the diner or calmed the traffic." "Exactly." Arius clapped his hands together. "It's a device of connection, a universal empathic resonance, if you will. It harnesses the power of pure charisma, of shared human emotion, and amplifies it through the medium." "It's not that the puppet is Elvis," Sarah theorized, "but that Elvis Presley was the most powerful modern manifestation of the very essence this Beckett embodies." Iris nodded sagely. "Think about it. Elvis broke racial barriers. With his music united blight. He bridged the gap between traditional blues and modern rock and roll. He spoke to generations transcending age, background, and geography. He was, in his time, the ultimate unifier through song. A modern Singer of Stones." The Beckett hummed a soft, approving sound, almost like a purr. Then a shimmering, swirling light began to emanate from its surface, coalescing into a hazy, dreamlike vision above it. It wasn't a clear image, but a tapestry of impressions. They saw ancient rituals around a glowing stone, people dancing in unison, their faces filled with joy. They saw tribal elders resolving disputes through song, a sense of peace settling over them. They saw crowds, vast and diverse, swaying to an unseen rhythm, their differences forgotten in shared bliss. And then woven into these ancient scenes were flashes of Elvis, stadiums packed with screaming fans, faces rapt with emotion, tears, and laughter flowing freely. It was a visual representation of the universal, timeless power of music and charisma to unite humanity. "It's showing us," Sarah whispered, awestruck. "It's showing us its history, its purpose." The vision faded, leaving behind a profound sense of understanding. The Bepit was a timeless mechanism, designed to mend, to unite, to inspire through the universal language of music and shared emotional experience. It wasn't just a scientific marvel. It was a beacon of hope, an ancient reminder that beneath all our differences we are connected by the rhythms of our hearts. "This is not just an archaeological find, Sarah," Eris said, his voice hushed with reverence. "This is a gift, a message across millennia. It's a testament to the enduring power of music to bring us together." Sarah looked at the Elvis bait, no longer seeing just a strange statue, but a living embodiment of harmony. The eerie coincidence was now a profound revelation. King wasn't just a symbol, he was a living echo of an ancient, beautiful truth. Their mission, they realized, was no longer just to understand it, but to share its unifying message with a fractured world. News, even of the most unbelievable kind, has a way of leaking. Despite Sarah's extreme caution, snippets of information began to trickle out. Whispers of an unclassifiable Beckett, anomalous energy readings, and, most dangerously, unexplained sonic phenomena. It wasn't long before unwanted attention began to converge on their quiet research facility. The first sign was the subtle uptick in unusual online inquiries directed at the university's archaeology department, all asking about Sarah Jennings and her current projects. Then came the phone calls, supposedly from independent researchers or philanthropic organizations expressing an unusual interest in new archaeological methodology. Eris, with his experience in the murky waters of academia and government funding, recognized the pattern immediately. "They're circling, Sarah," he warned, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a serious frown. "Someone or some group has caught wind of what you have, and they want it." "Who?" Sarah asked. A knot forming in her stomach. Could be anyone. A rival academic institution looking to scoop a monumental discovery, a private corporation hoping to exploit its unique properties, or, most likely, a Cumberland agency. The idea of the Elvis bait being used for anything other than its true purpose, to spread harmony and connection, sent a chill down Sarah's spine. It was a tool of peace, a conduit for joy. In the wrong hands, what could it become? A propaganda machine. They increased the lab's security, adding more layers of digital encryption and physical locks, but they knew it was only a matter of time. The threat manifested itself more directly a few days later. A team from a shadowy government agency, the Department of External Phenomena, arrived at the university. They were polite but unyielding, brandishing official documents that demanded the immediate cessation of all unsanctioned research and the transfer of all relevant materials to their custody. "We understand you've stumbled upon something unusual, Dr. Jennings," the lead agent, a severe woman named Agent Thorne, no relation to Eris, stated, her voice devoid of emotion. "For national security, we must contain and study it." Sarah and Eris stood firm. "This packet is of immense cultural and historical significance," Sarah countered, her voice shaking slightly but determined. "It belongs to humanity, not to a government file cabinet. Properties are unknown and potentially dangerous." Agent Thorne replied, her gaze fixed on the lab door behind them. "We cannot risk it falling into the wrong hands. Properties are to inspire and connect," Agent Eris interjected, stepping forward. "Not to harm." The standoff escalated. The agents were prepared to use force if necessary. Sarah felt a surge of desperation. They couldn't let it be locked away, misunderstood, or perverted. As the agents moved to breach the door, a deep, resonant hum vibrated through the entire facility. It wasn't just coming from the lab, it seemed to emanate from the very structure of the building. The lights in the corridor flickered. The agents paused. Unsettled? Then from within the lab, the sound of Elvis's voice, full and powerful, filled the air. It wasn't just audible. It was physically palpable, vibrating through their bones. Suspicious minds blasted through the walls, the iconic guitar riff sharp and accusing. The agents, caught off guard, instinctively took a step back. One of them actually clutched his head. The music wasn't just loud. It felt like it was speaking directly to their anxieties, their hidden doubts, their suspicious minds. Sarah and Eris exchanged a glance. The Bepit was defending itself, or rather it was asserting its presence, communicating its true nature in the only way it knew how. The music shifted, becoming more intense, almost overwhelming. It was still suspicious minds, but with an edge, a vibrant energy that seemed to subtly disorient the agents. They looked around, their expressions, a mix of confusion and discomfort. "This is highly irregular, Agent Thorne muttered, her composure finally cracking. "Perhaps the body prefers its current caretakers," Eris suggested, a faint smile playing on his lips. The standoff continued, but the agent's confidence had been shaken. The raw, emotional power of the music, coupled with the inexplicable vibrations and flickering lights, had introduced an element they hadn't anticipated. They were trained for physical threats, not for an ancient Bacchid that could sing Elvis. And subtly mess with their perceptions. Sarah knew this was just a temporary reprieve. They needed to do something more, something public, something that would reveal the Becket's true nature to the world, making it impossible for any single entity to control or suppress. King, it seemed, was ready for his grandest performance yet, and Sarah, with Eris by her side, was ready to help him take the stage. The standoff with the Department of Extranormal Phenomena had bought them time, but Sarah knew it was a temporary victory. Agent Thorne's team hadn't given up. They were just regrouping, planning their next move. Sarah and Eris realized they had only one option: a public unveiling. Not just a scientific presentation, but a true performance. They needed a platform, an audience, and a way to share the Becket's unifying message without causing panic or being immediately shut down. Eris, with his academic connections, suggested the upcoming International Conference on Ancient Civilizations, held annually at a prestigious university across the country. It was a long shot, but they had to try. They secured a presentation slot ostensibly to discuss novel interpretations of ancient acoustic phenomena. They carefully worded their abstract, hinting at unusual properties without revealing the core truth. The academic community was skeptical, but intrigued enough by Eris's reputation to grant them an hour in a smaller lecture hall. The day of the conference arrived, filled with a nervous energy that vibrated in sync with the low hum of the Beck. Sarah and Eris had secured a custom-built transparent display case for the king, allowing it to be seen while still protected. They wheeled it into the lecture hall, setting it center stage. The room was packed, not just by academics, but by curious journalists, conspiracy theorists, and even a few government observers. Sarah recognized Agent Thorne's stoic face in the back row. The air crackled with anticipation and thinly veiled skepticism. Sarah stepped up to the podium, taking a deep breath. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. "Today we present a Beckett that challenges our understanding of history, materials, science, and indeed the very nature of human connection." She explained the discovery, the impossible material, the failed tests, the ancient legends. She showed slides of the symbols on the base, the historical text. The audience murmured, some scoffing, others leaning forward, captivated. Then Eris took over, explaining their theory about the universal empathic resonator, the archetype of the unifying performer. "And now," he announced, turning to the transparent display case, "we would like to show you, or rather allow you to experience, the Bepic's true nature." Sarah approached the display case, a remote control in her hand. She pressed a button. Hidden speakers, strategically placed around the room, crackled to life. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, emanating directly from the Elvis space. The dark, polished surface began to glow with a soft internal blue light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The light grew brighter, casting an ethereal glow on the faces in the audience. Then the music began. It started with a slow, soulful piano intro, a bluesy, mournful melody. Then the clear, unmistakable voice of Elvis Presley filled the hall, singing, "Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you." It was "Can't Help Falling in Love," but it wasn't just a recording. The sound was rich, multidimensional, as if Elvis himself was in the room, his presence palpable. The bed vibrated, sending subtle tremors through the floor, resonating deep in everyone's chests. The blue light pulsed in time with the rhythm, growing brighter with each note. As the song swelled, something truly extraordinary happened. A soft, shimmering aura, almost like heat haze, began to rise from the beck. It coalesced, swirling until a faint, translucent holographic image began to form above the statue. It was Elvis. Not a perfectly solid image, but a shimmering, ghost-like figure strumming an invisible guitar, his lips moving with the song. His iconic movements, his soulful gaze. It was all there, rendered in pure light and sound. The audience gasped. Some leaped to their feet, jaws dropped. Agent Thorne in the back stared, her unreadable expression finally replaced by sheer disbelief. But it wasn't just the visual spectacle. It was the feeling. The music channeling through the bucket permeated the room, filling every person with a profound, undeniable sense of warmth, of connection, of shared joy. Hardened academics found tears welling in their eyes. Cynical journalists felt a lump in their throats. People who had been strangers moments before found themselves exchanging awe-filled glances, a shared understanding passing between them. The song reached its emotional climax, Elvis's voice soaring, the holographic image shining brightly. The whole room seemed to breathe as one suspended in a moment of pure, unadulterated beauty. When the last note faded, the blue light slowly dimmed, the holographic image dissolved, and the hum returned to a gentle thrum. Silence descended, but it was a different kind of silence, a reverent, stunned quiet. Then a ripple started. A single person clapped, then another, and then the entire lecture hall erupted in thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. Agent Thorne, still standing in the back, slowly, almost unconsciously, began to clap. Her expression was no longer one of suspicion, but of pure awe. The threat for now had been disarmed, not by force, but by the sheer, undeniable power of a song delivered by an ancient king. The world had just witnessed something impossible, something heartwarming, something truly transcendent. King had performed, and the world was all shook up in the best possible way. Months turned into a year, then two. The conference performance had been the turning point. The initial shock gave way to intense scientific curiosity and, more importantly, a profound global fascination. The video of the performance went viral, seen by billions. Suddenly, the ancient Elvis bit, affectionately dubbed the singer by the public, was no longer just a bizarre anomaly. It was a phenomenon. Sarah Jennings, once a struggling archaeologist, was now celebrated. She co-founded the Institute for Harmonious Resonance with Dr. Elvis Thorne, a research facility dedicated to understanding and responsibly sharing the Beckett's unique properties. Funding, once scarce, now flowed freely from governments, universities, and private donors, all eager to support the study of this incredible bridge between past and present. The singer was housed in a specially designed circular chamber, bathed in soft, natural light, accessible to researchers from around the world. It continued to perform, not on demand, but seemingly when it sensed a need, or when the mood was right. Sometimes it was for a small group of children on a field trip, sometimes for international dignitaries. sometimes just for Sarah and Eris, late at night, a private concert for its guardians. Its performances were never just about the music. People reported leaving the chamber feeling uplifted, connected, inspired to resolve conflicts, to create art, to be kinder. The eerie coincidence of Elvis was now understood not as a literal embodiment, but as a symbolic, resonant echo. The Beckett didn't become Elvis. It channeled the universal essence of Maddox connection and unifying music, an essence that Elvis Presley had so powerfully embodied in the modern age. He was the perfect, instantly recognizable face for an ancient, timeless power. Sarah herself was transformed. The jaded cynicism that had weighed her down for years had vanished, replaced by an unwavering sense of purpose and a profound appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things. She lectured worldwide, not just on archaeology, but on the power of music, empathy, and the hidden harmonies that bind humanity. She became a bridge herself, connecting science with spirituality, logic with wonder. The singer reminds us, she once said in an interview, her eyes shining, that the need for connection, for joy, for shared rhythm, is as old as humanity itself, and that music in its purest form transcends all barriers. Eris, ever the philosopher, penned several best-selling books, exploring the idea of archetypal figures appearing throughout history, drawing parallels between ancient bards and modern pop stars, all embodying the same fundamental human drive for expression and unity. The world wasn't suddenly perfecting, conflict still arose, but the singer offered a beacon. Countries in dispute sometimes requested a performance from the singer, finding that the shared emotional experience could soften hardened positions, opening pathways for dialogue. Musicians and artists from all genres flocked to study it, finding new inspiration and understanding the profound ancient roots of their craft. Children especially were drawn to it. They didn't question the Elvis part, they simply accepted it. They'd sit cross-legged in front of the Beckett, their faces wrapped, bathed in the blue glow, feeling the vibrations, listening to the impossible, ancient yet modern songs. They understood instinctively the message of harmony. The eerie coincidence had blossomed into a beautiful, heartwarming legacy. The ancient Beckett, looking exactly like Elvis Presley, had not only rewritten history, but had reminded humanity of its deepest, most beautiful truths. It stood as a silent yet powerfully resonant monument to the timeless power of music, connection in the enduring spirit of the King, who, through an impossible miracle, continued to help us all can't help falling in love. And Sarah Jennings, the archaeologist, who had once only sifted dust, now helped humanity uncover its heart.